Can we talk a bit about the panel positions themselves in terms of, I suppose, the orientation of the panels, the angles that they need to be mounted on? If you've only got a skillion roof that rakes up to the north, that only faces south, a lot of people immediately dismiss that solar's even possible for them because it just won't be able to have any efficiency about it. But then others, say, well, no, that's not the advice that I'm getting. How do you recommend people go about finding out the suitability of their roof for being able to fit solar, or if they're designing a roof, how they need to think about what to design in order to get solar to work well on their roof?
Yeah. So obviously if you're designing, it's a bit easier. But if you're talking about an existing roof, then usually when you sign up for a quote or you phone in for a quote, the suppliers pull up your house on a software program called Nearmap, which is like Google Earth, except that it takes pictures at different times of the day, at different times of the year. So from that, they can see any seasonal variations, for example, deciduous trees that might cause shading at certain times of the year, or even a chimney or an air conditioning unit that has shading depending on where the sun is. So they can get quite a lot of that information and see how much sun actually hits your roof year round. So they'll make those recommendations based on that. You mentioned about south-facing roof. So obviously the sun rises in the east, moves around the north and sets in the west. So it gets the sun on the east-facing roof in the morning, the west-facing roof in the afternoon, but the north year-round is going to get sun. However, so traditionally, especially when there were higher feed-in tariffs, people would want to put it on the north because that's when it's going to generate the most. But when you're thinking about using that power and trying to maximize using the power when it's generating, we're actually increasingly seeing people putting them on the east and the west intentionally, knowing that that's when they're home. They're not home in the middle of the day.
Gotcha.
So it's not a hard and fast rule. And even on a south-facing roof, you would expect some generation, but not much. And some suppliers won't actually install on south because they just know the payback is going to be that much longer. That's a reputational risk for them if people say, well, I'm not getting much from my system. But, there's still UV around, so it would still capture some light.
And then in terms of the angle? Yep.
Yeah, so we get this question come up a bit where there's a flat roof that gets sun kind of throughout the day, and people say, well, why can't I just put the panels? But the short answer is if they're on an angle, the rain cleans them. So that's why ideally they're on an angle. Okay. And most roofs that are sort of a 35-degree angle, the solar panels are just put on the pitch of the roof. But anywhere between 10 and 45 degrees, or sort of 10 and 35 degrees, is going to have a pretty good uptake of solar light going onto it. We used to have more considerations around the width of the light, so where it would come. So, for example, the sun's in the east, but it can still hit a north-facing panel, and that used to be a lot narrower. The newer panels, that's another way in which they've increased in efficiency, is they can actually collect light from different angles.
Okay.
So for example, your east-facing roof, as the sun moves around to the north, is still going to be able to capture some of that light. But yeah, so usually the panels are just put on the pitch to the roof because it's easier. If it's a flat roof and then a frame needs to be built, then the tilt frame's often put at about 20 degrees.
And in terms of the roof structure itself, so you mentioned before if there's tiles, they build a frame on top. In terms of, a metal roof that can be directly fixed to the roof itself. Obviously, if the pitch is a very shallow pitch, then the frame may need to be built up anyway. Is there anything that in terms of the weight of the panels or anything like that, anything that needs to be taken into consideration, running wiring, all of those types of things in terms of perhaps when this gets done and sort of strategies about, people that might be renovating or remodeling when they're pulling their roof off and putting it back on, sort of that staging of work. What do you recommend people understand in terms of applying solar to their roof spaces?
So firstly, if the roof is not structurally sound, then don't do it. The panels weigh about 16 kilos each, so they're quite heavy. So when you're talking about having sort of 16 or 20 panels on your roof, that's quite a bit of weight. It's spread out. It's not all kind of bam in one go. So as long as the roof's structurally sound, it's designed to hold that weight. If there's any repairs needed, then do them first. If you are going to be doing some renovations or changing the roof in the coming years, you can get the panels taken off, get the roof fixed and put back on. But of course, there's all the labour costs involved in that. So if it's imminent, the renovations or the roof changes, then wait till it's all done and dusted.